Good morning, everyone. I wasn't sure if anybody would even show this morning because of the rain, but I take it as a friendly gesture from Barcelona and the region to me, because I'm from Seattle, so I'm very much used to this type of weather, and I can't say I enjoyed coming here this morning because of the rain, but it was very familiar weather at least. So thank you for that. I hope you had a good night last night, and if you are not from the area, and even if you are from the area, had a good time and enjoyed the city and went for dinner and spent time with friends and new acquaintances. This morning, I want to open the conference with a slightly different topic, and it is a little bit of an experiment, and I hope you stay with me throughout this experiment. We made a lot of discoveries, I should say, during the last 3 to 5 years that we were working, my team and I, and many colleagues. You met Marcus yesterday, working in DevOps engagements where we helped a lot, many companies of all sizes with different areas, with the adoption of DevOps practices, with the implementation of certain practices, using open source tooling and Microsoft tooling. But there was more than just the tech, and often, more often than not, was the technology not really the challenge, but it was more about everything else, what's behind the technology, and it had to do with the people and how they interacted and things like that. And so this presentation, this presentation will look at the people aspect, at the cultural aspect. And when you attended the QA presentation yesterday, there was already, a little bit of that in there, and you're all working as a team if you're going into DevOps and things like that. This will drive, hopefully, this message home a little bit. My name is Volker. I'm part of a team which is called Commercial Software Engineering in Redmond, Washington. We have globally a team of, I think it's about 400 to 500 software engineers that work with customers and Microsoft partners in many different engagements, but all have to do with cloud adoption. So we sit with customers, with development teams, with DevOps teams at a customer for a limited amount of time and help them solving critical technical problems in many different areas. And DevOps is not so much the main focus of this team. It is more about cloud adoption in general, touching bleeding edge scenarios like IoT or even machine learning. And as part of this team, my group is a tiny team that is based in Redmond, and we also go into these engagements and work, like I mentioned, work with these customers, not so much on the deep technical aspects that other colleagues work on. We look at the flow of value when people start building their software solutions. We look into the aspects of DevOps implementations alongside with our colleagues. So we're a dedicated team focusing on implementing and helping customers with the implementation of DevOps practices. Like I mentioned, there is a lot to say about the technology, and many of the presentations, most of the time yesterday, was spent on the technology, and it's mostly well understood and well established. But there's another area, like I mentioned, which is the people aspect. And I assume that most of the audience here is in the tech area, so is either a developer or an ops person, or is a tester or a QA person, so is directly involved with technology. And my background is I'm a software developer, I started my career about 30 years ago as a developer, but I also managed IT infrastructure for large financial institutions. And so I've seen both sides, and I know how difficult it can be not only for people of the same and similar roles, so for devs, to talk about stuff that is not really techie. And so the people and the cultural thing can become very difficult. What we discovered over the 5 to 7 years, I tried to summarize, and I tried to, for this presentation, try to come up with 6 or 7 topics, and 7 topics here that we saw commonly acknowledged by teams that were successful in their implementations of DevOps practices, and we saw teams where one or more of these were missing, where these teams struggled implementing. And you could argue, obviously, is this the right list of topics? Is this even the right, if they might be the right ones, is this the right order of priority? Those are the 7 that we saw coming up, and I will walk you through these 7 topics and explain what the attributes of these habits, I guess you could call them, habits are, and how they influence the team building, and how teams work together. There's the focus. This is about, don't boil the ocean, don't try to solve everything. I have an interesting story to tell about this. Risk, we all know risk is always can be a very slippery slope. Risk-taking in a newly formed team of developers and ops people, there's a lot of risk involved. Patience, a lot of patience is required from all the players involved, from the management, from the leadership team, and from the team itself that is working in a DevOps fashion, if I'm allowed to say that. Support. These teams need a lot of support. There's internal support within the team. There's external support from the outside. We'll look into what that support looks like. And then the last 3, collaboration, communication, and sharing. Again, you could say, oh, this is all part of the same thing, but all 3 are important enough to cover them separately. Before we go there, I have just a couple of slides to talk to you about what DevOps is and what I mean by culture, so that we have a little bit of a shared understanding. I took this slide from one of our decks where that we pulled together over the years with introductory information about what is DevOps, why it's relevant, why it's important. And you can see these guys touching certain parts of an elephant and all believe that they know exactly what DevOps is and what DevOps means for them. I think there's a lot of things missing on this slide. What I wanted to do is I wanted to look behind the elephant. And this is what the 7 topics, the 7 habits I mentioned earlier, this is what is behind this elephant. It's not so much about the elephant itself, about DevOps, but what's behind it. I think it was 2008, Patrick Dubois, the so-called godfather of DevOps, said at a conference, it was very early days, DevOps fundamentally is a human problem. And I can say from personal experience and from many years of experiences in my team that, yes, the human factor in these engagements is a very relevant one, and you must definitely be at least aware that there's a lot of stuff going on that goes way beyond technology. In preparation for this talk, I came across a new book from a person, Mirko Herring. I hope I pronounce his name properly. The book's title is DevOps for the Modern Enterprise. It's a nice little book. It has, I don't know, close to 300 pages, I believe. And it's roughly divided in 3 main sections. The middle section is interestingly enough, is about people. And the title is The People and the Organizational Dimension. And finding a book that is full of tech stories, full of very interesting details about DevOps and practice implementations, there's 1/3 of the book covering the people aspect. Again, highlighting how important the people are.
The DevOps logo. So here's the thing. DevOps is a cultural and professional movement, period. That's it. It's culture. It's about...
Let's go back. Sorry. This is my next slide. I have one more slide about DevOps. What you about to hear is Adam Jacob in 2010 at the Velocity conference. Unfortunately, there was no video there, but at least you can hear him. It's just 15 seconds. He was working at OpsCode as a CTO at that time. He's now working for Chef, so there is a lot of money, a lot to be said about technology, and there's definitely a lot of money in the technology with DevOps. But his first 15 seconds of his introductory presentations, I want to play. So sorry you can't see him, but at least you can hear him.
The DevOps logo. So here's the thing. DevOps is a cultural and professional movement. Period. That's it. It's culture. It's about your job.
Oh, it's
That's
there.
it. That's all it is. There's no technology. You can't patent DevOps. You can't really take out a Google keyword on DevOps.
Okay, so that is just the 15 seconds. You find this video on YouTube. I have a link there. And this was in the early days of DevOps, before things like Zebia Lab, for example, published its periodic table of DevOps tools. People were excited about this new way of professionals working together to solve technical problems. And it's very obvious that the cultural aspect is at the center of it. And all the tooling that you see today, one way or the other, and this goes way beyond tools like Slack and others, all the tools are essentially there to help you solve the technical problems. And as you can see with many of the tools, they are built in a way that they respect what the people that are supposed to use these tools, where these people come from, what their backgrounds are, whether they are developers, whether they are infrastructure people. These tools are written in a way that most of the tools are written in a way that they respect the cultural background of the people. Another thing I want to make sure, when I say DevOps, it implies that it's developers and operations, but it's very clear that it doesn't stop there. And over the time, many people made different attempts to expand on the term DevOps to encompass most of the people who are involved in a DevOps process. And there's like DevSecOps, BizDevSecOps, BizDev, NetSecOps, and more. So I think this is, when I talk about DevOps, I try to be very inclusive. I mean everyone who's involved in building a solution, in maintaining and running a solution. And the success of the solution depends on the collaboration of everyone. Let's go on. This is about culture. I found a very, very nice definition of culture. Culture, in the Collins English Dictionary, culture is the total range of activities and ideas of a group of people with shared traditions which are transmitted and reinforced by members of the group. I like this definition very much because it is exactly what I try to express. This is about DevOps is about shared traditions. When you bring together developers and operations and everybody else who's involved into a team to build a solution, to solve a technical challenge, they bring their own cultures, they bring their own shared traditions. So this new team, you have to keep in mind, this new team doesn't yet have a shared tradition. So they don't have their own culture yet. And there's extra effort outside of the tech necessary to build this shared culture, to build this shared tradition. Only then can you start and transmit what you know, what you learn, and share your experience and reinforce your message. So always keep in mind, the technology is very, very important, but it is more than just the technology. One last word, and then we go in. This word cloud is from a document that we have, as a team, have created over the years. Whenever we go in an engagement, we document the work that we do. So we describe the technology that is used, we keep track of the value stream maps that you saw yesterday, and mostly we keep track of the technology. But my team also documents all the non-technical challenges that we face. And this is a word cloud. I hadn't done that before. I hadn't thought about this. And so this is a word cloud of one document that has been written over the past 5 years and includes all the learning, all the learnings that we had from the non-technical learnings that we have from our DevOps engagements. I found this interesting and at least wanted you to show that. But enough said. This was the list of habits was just very short, 7 topics. It's not a very comprehensive list, but it is a list that we found is very interesting with respect to any of the DevOps implementations we saw. So let's dig in. The first one is focus. You only have focus and can focus if you know about the context in which you operate. So if you are a new DevOps team, if you are an existing DevOps team, you need a lot of context so you understand what are the technical problems, what are the technical challenges, what are you supposed to solve, and that allows you to focus. What we had a company that was, it's a few years back, it's the typical story. The company one day decided, actually it was the CTO of a medium-sized company, he decided that from next week on, we work the DevOps way. He had read about it and got totally excited, so he wanted to turn his organization into a DevOps organization. What you've done so far, you continue doing it, but you all work together in a big team and you solve the problems ahead. You build the next iteration, you implement the features, but you do it in a DevOps way. Nobody had any idea what it meant. So this worked really well for about 2 months, and then this DevOps endeavor was canceled because they didn't achieve anything. Even the existing release plans didn't work out because everybody was struggling with everything, basically. They didn't know how to work together. Ops people obviously had different priorities than the developers. So when you start with DevOps, when you start with a new DevOps team, the most important thing I would say is you need to provide proper focus for the team. Prioritize the work, make sure that you have set the right priorities, you have scoped the context for what the team is supposed to achieve, not too wide. You saw the presentation, hopefully, yesterday about value stream map. In the beginning of our engagements, when the team started fresh, we did a lot of these value stream maps, which helped us a lot to focus, actually, and also help putting guardrails around what we can and what we cannot achieve. Minimizing the effort. I think this goes along the same line with the value stream map. You'll find out that when you do an exercise like a value stream map, you'll find out what you can and what you cannot achieve in the given timeline that you have. So minimizing the effort and striving for simplicity. So focus on one thing at a time, solve one thing, and then focus on the next thing. Also, it is not important, what we saw is it's not important that you focus on, well, I shouldn't say that most likely because we have team managers here in the team, but you should not focus so much on the timelines that are given. You should focus on creating quality output. That is something that's only possible if you are in the right focus and if you have the right focus for your team. Risk-taking is another very relevant aspect, and every work that you do in tech has some risk, encompasses some risks, but in DevOps, risk-taking is even more interesting and relevant, because what you need as a DevOps team, you need encouragement from your leadership, and you need to encourage yourselves that you should be open to taking risks. You should be open to experiment and to find out what works by, and this is the typical phrase, by failing, by making mistakes, failing fast, recovering, learning from your mistakes, and then move on. This is a particular big challenge if you are in the ops business, if you're an ops person, if you have to do with infrastructure and deployment. There is no real margin for error. You have to keep the lights on 24/7. You have to be successful all the time, which is something that, from a developer perspective, the developer obviously has a desire to build new stuff, to implement new features, and to get them out in front of the customers, to delight the customers. So there's a certain risk awareness, fear of risk on the ops side that you should be aware of as a developer, and make sure that you as a team jointly decide how much risk you are willing to take. Experimentation goes along the same line. Experimentation is nice from a developer perspective, from a security, operations, and even networking perspective. Experimentation is not necessarily something that is highly desired. Again, a very interesting area for potential conflict between different roles within the DevOps team. Hiring is another interesting aspect where we saw that sometimes companies decided that they just hired new people, brought in new people without first looking into their own workforce to find out, do we have the right people that are willing to take risk, for example, on the ops side, are willing to experiment, are willing to do that. And instead of that, they just put out a job posting to hire new DevOps engineers, which sometimes might help, but in most cases it prevents from even shorter term successes, because you don't have the company history and you bring in new people with new knowledge, but don't have any experience with the existing world that they go into. So this risk taking is something that ideally should be avoided. Patience is, I guess, one of the big virtues in DevOps. Patience is in particularly relevant from a management perspective, because if you start new in your DevOps journey, you don't know exactly what the detailed plan for your implementations will look like. And if you don't know what the expected outcome, you might know what the expected outcome is, but you might not know how to get there and how much resources and how much budget is required. So there's patience that the management team in particular needs to demonstrate to help the team to be successful. like I said earlier, the whole DevOps work happens in a very dynamic environment, and even within the team, there is a lot of patience required. Again, when you stress the fact that you bring together the developers and the operations people who come from different backgrounds and have different goals, basically, and now they have to work together and have to be patient with each other. Another interesting aspect in the context of patience is also something that might not come naturally when you think about patience. It is about how do you measure the success of individuals? So how do you measure the individuals on the team's performance? That is something that now that you have a group that is responsible for the delivery and the execution of a new product, of a new feature, how do you measure the success of the individual? So there might be new ways that you have to find out about how you measure the success of the individuals on your teams. Support is always obviously relevant and important. There's two aspects I want to look at with respect to support. I want to look at the management side, the support that is required from the management side, and I want to look at the support that is required from members within the team. You need both, otherwise you cannot be successful. On the management side, obviously the DevOps team, again, especially if it is a relatively new team, this team has a lot to do not only with software, with coding, with deploying, with testing. They also have to build a team. They also have to come together as a team. And since the DevOps implementation, the DevOps work might be very new for the whole company, there is a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure within the team itself to do the right thing, to be successful, but there's also a lot of pressure coming from the outside, from the management team, and in particular from the business leadership side. So you as a manager of a DevOps team, you want to make sure that you have your team's backs, that you shield your team from these unnecessary distractions, if I want to put it that way. At the same time, if you as a manager, you are new to a DevOps way of working, then obviously the desire to take a closer look at how people work, what people do, is very high. So the likelihood that you try and start to micromanage is there. Another thing that you definitely want to avoid, on the contrary, you want to delegate responsibility into the team. You want to make sure that the team itself understands and is empowered to take ownership for what they build and how they build that. On the team side, with the delegation of responsibility for certain decisions into the team, you now, as a team, you now own it. So you will need a lot of support from each other in owning the decisions, in owning what you and how you implement. And there's a lot, again, since this talk is a lot about the non-technical aspect, there's a lot of team dynamics going on, especially if you have not worked yet together as a team. You should definitely be aware of that and use time to reflect about the certain dynamics that might be going on in the team, and use the opportunity to discuss these in the team as much as you would discuss technical aspects. Collaboration, you could almost see that as the continuation of the last topic. You could call it teamwork if you prefer. It's a very very difficult, in particular with very diverse teams that don't have developed a shared tradition yet and are still discovering how they best can work together with. And there's things happening where what we've seen actually is that even though the team now works so the team with different roles works together for the successful implementation, they still adhere to the model. This is how we have always done it, and we'll continue to do that. This is definitely something that is not really helpful when you have to collaborate, when you have to work together. Another area that in the context of collaboration, we found very interesting and very stressful in some cases was the distance aspect. Distance, there's at least two different areas of distance. There's the distance when you work with a third-party company. You collaborate with a system integrator, for example, in your team that might not work in a combined fashion, in a DevOps way, in a collaborative way. How do you collaborate with someone, an entity like that? If you have a team that works across different time zones, a typical scenario, not just in DevOps, but how do you coordinate that? How do you leave a trail of decisions that were made? What if you have more than one DevOps team that has to collaborate? How do you do that? Which are the proper tools that you use? We've seen implementations of these scenarios where companies still relied heavily on email. I would say that email is the least efficient tool when it comes to collaboration. Sounds weird because we also sell Outlook, but email is not the best tool when it comes to the type of collaboration we're talking about here. The best way, and there's plenty of tools in between and options in between, the best way is talking to people, face to face. Speak and talk to each other in meetings, in the hallway if you are close. And there's one more thing that I want to mention. When talking to people is, especially if you are in different time zones, if you are in different countries, it is not always possible to talk in person. So you fall back to, in our case, we use Skype. We start using Microsoft Teams, even for voice meetings. Voice is good, but it only does so much. What we found very, very helpful is using video conferencing. Video conferencing, whatever your preferred video conferencing tool is way more effective and way more efficient than just audio. Because now, as if you were in the same room with the person, you see the reaction, you see the frowny faces that the person potentially makes. You have a way better opportunity to understand what is meant. Communication. Communication is the underlying infrastructure, if you will, for success. And you need to get the collaboration piece right, but you also have to get the communication piece right. There was a lot said yesterday in one of the presentations about team communication. But there's the how you communicate with people from different backgrounds is as important as it is how you communicate out what you what you work on and what your goals are, and what your successes, what your failures are. You definitely should find, for the internal communication, should find a way to, on a very regular basis, I was going to say on a daily basis, to communicate with each other and discuss the challenges and issues that you face. And this goes beyond the daily or weekly stand-ups. This is more like a constant way of communicating. Regular meetings to talk to people might help with that. And then obviously the tools like Slack or Microsoft Teams come to mind, where if you use these tools to communicate, you also can always go back and see what was discussed, what decisions were made, and how did you get to these decisions. Coming to the last topic, communication you use basically to share, and as they say, sharing is caring. Sharing is a fundamental habit in DevOps success. And there's different aspects of sharing. You want to share with other teams, with other members of, as a manager, with other members of your leadership team. You want to share your experiences. You want to share the knowledge, the frustration, also the success. We had one story where it was a newly formed DevOps team, and they had just one goal. They had a small application and tasked themselves with implementing a continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline. Not a big thing. They got their work done. They were successful. The one thing that they missed, though, is it took them a little bit longer than expected. So people started asking questions, but they were never outside of the team sharing anything about their progress, or anything about, we might have a little delay, we might need a little bit more help. Nobody outside of the team learned what was going on. And then at one day, it was the manager came to the team and said, guys, I don't know what's going on here. Are you successful or not? Where are we? And so they demonstrated the result. Everything was fine. But they did a post-mortem and decided that one fundamental thing they missed in their implementation was they never shared their experiences. They never shared the outcome. They never gave the opportunity for others to learn, including the manager in this case. So, but it was partially a success because they learned something. And when they embarked on their next implementation, what this team did is, so they were part of they were on the second floor, I believe, in a somewhat larger building. And the second floor, they housed like 3 teams. There's this team and 2 more teams. And what in the middle of the floor was a somewhat larger kitchen, where there's the water cooler, the coffee maker, and where people gathered for lunch or for after-hours beer or something like that. So what this team did is they installed a huge monitor, like 85 inches or something like that, and they started displaying progress in the sense that they had a dashboard that displayed the error rate of the application. They had a scrubbed version of a reduced version of the Kanban board, and they published a sanitized version of their backlog and had it on a rotating display there. And so the other teams saw that, and they started talking to each other and started asking questions. And over the course of, and when we engaged, all three teams already were working in the DevOps way of doing work, and the way they obviously infested the other teams was basically through sharing their information. Oh, and one more thing did they do. They loaned out, I think, 1 or 2 team members from the original team and planted them into the other teams so that they could also learn more more sharing was possible because these people were deeply integrated into the new teams. Yeah, and so in closing, I don't know if you have made similar experiences, other experiences, but these 7 areas, providing focus, allowing to take risk, having the right set of patience on the management side as well on the implementers side, support within the team, a lot of support from the management team, and then collaboration and communication and sharing. We found the most important and most relevant aspects of DevOps, and more often than not saw we teams failing if they missed one or more of these habits or caring about one or more of these habits. And so this brings me to the end of my presentation. Like I mentioned, we are not a team of team builders or psychologists or something. We are all systems engineers, and we go into these engagements to work on the tech. And this presentation was about the non-technical aspects that we discovered. But if you are interested in all the tech work that we had done, then here's a URL where you can go and find out about at least the most interesting stories that we have put together and published on this portal. With that said, thank you very much, and I'm here for questions, obviously, but I'm also around all day. No.
What an excellent talk. I mean, Volker, we need more talks like that. It's nice to talk about clusters and all that stuff, but sometimes myself, I struggle to speak to other managers about all these things, and I for sure will post that talk to the other C-levels at Ola Luz because we need more talks like that. So thank you very much.